This comes to us from Pirate Nation, who says Ubisoft dev says Nintendo Switch 2 game cards don't support performance needed. And this is in reference to the gold edition of Star Wars Outlaws. And over on Blue Sky, a Ubisoft developer, Rob Banton, says Snowdrop relies heavily on disc streaming for its open world environments. And Snowdrop is Ubisoft's version of like their own engine, like the Unreal Engine. Ubisoft invested in their own and they call it Snowdrop. He said, and we found the Switch 2 cards simply didn't give the performance we needed at the quality target we were going for. I don't recall the cost of the cards ever entering the discussion, probably because it was moot. And this John Lindman replied, okay, so I was right then. I had a feeling that might be the case given the amount of streaming going on in the game/engine and based on the results we saw with other Switch 2 cart games. And Rob replied, I think if we designed a game for Switch 2 from the ground up, it might have been different. As it was, we'd build a game around the SSDs of the initial target platforms. And then the Switch 2 came along a while later. In this case, I think our leadership made the right call. And this is the official thread over here. And this John Lindemann guy says, regarding the Video Games Chronicle post, I know Oliver is working on a video, but I've also played a bit, and man, this is insanely impressive. It's doing more than expected. Cutbacks are there, but honestly, it's legit with a nice suite of RT features intact. Amazing work from the UB here. It's also a solid game. And then we have this one from IGN, who says, Star Wars Outlaws developer defends Nintendo Switch 2 game key cards, says cartridges that force you to download the game are better for loading. so now we're getting the other side of it, saying, hey, no. The best part of the Switch 2 is the game key card, because that way it installs it to the SSD of the device, and it can play directly off of that instead of loading the information from the game card itself, which impacts the quality of the game experience because it was not built from the ground up for the Switch 2. Says the use of the Switch 2's widely disliked game key cards was defended by a Ubisoft developer who worked on a Nintendo port of Star Wars Outlaws. Writing on social media, Ubisoft audio architect Rob Banton shared the real reason why the Nintendo Switch 2 version of Star Wars Outlaws used game key card, a physical cartridge that requires owners that still download the game rather than including the full thing on the cart. The answer? It's all due to the Switch 2's data speeds and how quickly the hardware can read information from its bespoke cartridges versus game downloaded to the console's internal memory. Maybe, but I am going to press X to doubt on this, because I think people know the real reason is the Switch 2 game carts cost way more money for a publisher to make the game and put the entire game on the game card itself. It's a far more value proposition to just do the key card and be like, bro, trust us, just download it and save us money. We'll charge you the same amount. We'll charge you the full price for the game. And you're not even going to get a game on the cartridge. You're just going to get a download code for an online store that may or may not still be around in 10 years. Probably won't be, based off Nintendo's history, by the way. Never know. Star Wars Outlaws game engine Snowdrop relies heavily on disc streaming for its open world environments, and we found the Switch 2 cards simply don't give the performance we needed at the quality target we were going for. The information has come as a surprise to some Nintendo fans who have previously grumbled over the use of game key cards, which are cheaper and therefore increasingly popular among developers of larger games, which would otherwise require more costly cartridges with increased memory capacity. I don't recall the cost of the cards ever entering the discussion, probably because it was moot, he continued. No. Again, I don't believe you. I can guarantee you that is the first topic that comes up when deciding what to do with your game and how to sell it. You don't just not bring up, oh, it's going to cost us this amount of money if we do this versus the amount of money we save if we do this. That has to be the first thing you talk about, not whatever else you're talking about right now. This is all this side stuff. While not a comprehensive reason for all developers to use game keycards, Banton went on to explain that it was important for Ubisoft and its Snowdrop development team, especially as Outlaws was originally developed for PlayStation 5 and Xbox XS console platforms that had faster SSD memory on board. I think if we designed the game for Switch 2 from the ground up, it might have been different. As it was, we built a game around the SSDs of the initial target platforms, and the Switch 2 came along a while later. In this case, I think our leadership made the right call. Last month, Nintendo launched a fresh fan survey that quizzed Switch 2 owners for their opinions on buying digital games instead of boxed copies, which I talked about in a previous live stream, and specifically asked for feedback on game keycards following their less than stellar initial reception among fans who prefer their physical games to include, well, the game. This is something that I've asked you guys too often, whether it's in the videos or in the live streams. Everyone universally across the board is telling me that they would prefer the entire game on the cart itself. I have not seen anyone say, yeah, I don't care either way, whatever, it doesn't matter to me, it makes no difference. That is not a thing. People want the full game on the cart if they're paying full price for the game. I don't understand how people could take a different perspective than that, and why Nintendo would be confused about this, and why they would even need a survey to prove this to themselves. I personally have zero intention to purchase any Switch 2 games on cartridges that don't include the game on the cartridge at all. And when we talked about this previously, it came up that Nintendo did clarify that any first-party Nintendo games for the Switch 2 will indeed be the full game on the cartridge. And with that being said, honestly, here's this kind of the kick in the nuts to Nintendo now. I have zero intention to making the Switch 2 my primary platform for gaming. So third-party games are going to go by the wayside, and I will purchase them and play them on Steam. And Steam will be my new platform of choice. PC Steam is it used to be the original Nintendo Switch, but now with this game keycard thing and the transition of playing PC games and the advent of so much more power and just ability and versatility with the Steam Deck, the Rogue Ally, and many other devices that are coming out that are competing directly with the Switch 2, it's like Nintendo doesn't have the same leg up on competition that they used to have. And now with the introduction of these game key cards, it's even less of a reason to use Nintendo as the primary resource for where you're going to be playing your games now, which is wild for me to say because I used to be like a hardcore Nintendo fanboy where I'm like, yep, Nintendo Switch is my primary system to play. I have probably well over 150 Switch games in my, like physical in my library right now. In the Switch 2, I have Donkey Kong Bonanza as the only physical game that I have because Mario Kart World came with my Switch 2 when I bought it as a DLC game or a downloadable game, I should say. So there's no other physical. I'm not going to buy any of these third-party games with game key cards. It makes no sense. I just think it's funny with the cope that Ubisoft has going on right now about what is going on with Star Wars Outlaws. And I do want to show this graphics comparison real quick. This is a video from Analista Debits. They have 706,000 subscribers, and they did a comparison with the textures between Xbox, PlayStation 5, and Switch 2. And the differences are wild, absolutely wild. So check this. Here we go. There's the Switch 2. I mean, the difference between the actual texture on the rock to a very bland nothing, that's a massive downgrade. Massive downgrade. And PlayStation 5, look, it all comes right back. That is wild to me. Here it is, like a live video feed of it. The difference is pretty clear. I mean, here's the thing, by the way. As a Switch 2 owner, I don't go into buying a Switch 2 game expecting that to be the best performing version of a game. I would do it because it's exclusive to the platform of what I'm playing it on, and it's the only way I can play it, or there's some sort of reason why I would buy it for the Switch 2. Which again goes back to my point. I've said this like 20 times now. I'll say it again. I feel like the Switch 2 is going to do far worse in the grand scheme compared to the Switch 1, because the buying proposition for buying games for gamers is just not there anymore. The Switch 1, it was there. Now it's not. And I have even less of an interest with the introduction with game key cards. And then hearing that the price is going upwards of $80 for a game, like, no, I'm good. I'm good, Nintendo. No thanks. No thanks. So yeah, this is the difference between the versions of it. Here's the water, the reflections, and the rocks. You see a big difference with the rocks and the distance too. The draw distance and the quality in the way background. And obviously the reflections too. Not terrible though, all things considered. Because like I said, I don't go into the Switch 2 expecting crazy good graphics. So grand scheme, I think it looks pretty good relative to the powerhouses. It kind of looks like playing a game on a PC and setting the graphics to the lowest setting. It's kind of what it gives me the vibes of. And the water also looks kind of like jello when it bounces. But again, not terrible. Not terrible. But I do see this as a problem for the future of the Nintendo Switch 2. This is loading times. Let's see. From internal. Man, it's a long load time for the Series S. Oh, no. Uh-oh. This is a really long load. Holy crap. Almost 18 seconds to load the level. Yikes. Yikes. That was brutal. That was brutal. Yikes. Stuff like that. I don't necessarily care about the graphics when I'm playing a game like this. Sure, it's great. I'll take it like a cherry on top. But it's more about just the access, the ease of use, the loading times, just the smoothness of the experience. I can't with a game with 18 seconds loading time, like in between areas. Yikes. That is definitely something. And yeah, looks like it's capped out at 30 frames per second too, which is another massive yikes. We're in 2025, and instead of developers perfecting the 60 frame per second or more, they've just added more and more shit to the game world and made it even harder and struggled more to get to 30 frames per second. You're going the wrong way, developers. Stop it. But yeah, going back to the main point of this entire topic, I think it's fascinating that Ubisoft developers are having a coping session, being like, no, it's totally the game keycards are the way to go because it's on the internal SSD. Hey, maybe that plays a small role in this, but at the end of the day, it is and always does fall back on the almighty dollar. And how can they save a penny? Never mind $1, $5. They're probably saving what, $12 per sale by putting it on a game key card instead of an actual cartridge. Like, think about that. And this guy's trying to make you think that the money had nothing to do with it. Get out of here. Come on now. Come on.